Welcome to MarTech Heads, the radio show that helps tech marketers stay ahead of the game. Hosted by Jeff Sheehan and Sarah Torville.
Well, so folks, I tell you one thing. It's what a great conference we've had so far here this afternoon. It's even getting even better with our next guest that Sarah Torville, Media Frenzy, and I were going to introduce Joseph Jaffe. How's it feel to actually have a conference named after your book in some respects? Flip My Funnel is the conference we're attending, and you have a book called Flip the Funnel. So without further ado, please tell us about yourself and what you've gotten out of this conference, the company, what you're actually doing out there, Joe.
Well, this conference has been, has been an interesting one because, of course, Flip the Funnel became Flip My Funnel. So my beautiful Flip the Funnel was bastardized by this.
Sorry to hear that.
And so I started off my keynote today, literally saying that. I was announcing that I was suing the company, but
I missed that piece.
No, that was good.
Yeah.
But you know what? It's I'm a big believer in the rising tide floats all boats, and right now, whether it's flipping the funnel, my funnel, your funnel, some of it sounds a bit obscene. The real the enemy of my enemy is my friend, but in this case, the real enemy is the traditional funnel. It is this obsession with acquisition marketing, and of course, it's important and it's vital, and you need new blood and you need new customers, but not at the expense of neglecting your existing customer, not just your customer, but your loyalist, your advocate. A concept that I wrote about in my fourth book, Zero, the zealot, someone that tattoos your brand on their body. This is the lifeblood, the super consumer, someone who buys you a lot and talks about you a lot to a lot of people. We're neglecting these people by obsessing on this kind of ground Hoggian day approach, which is just, kind of new customers. And so, it's a passion point of mine. It's very near and dear to my heart, this concept of flipping the funnel, whether it's my funnel, our funnel, your funnel. But the bottom line is our work begins with the customer purchase, not ends. And our marketing dollars should yield increasing returns on that investment, not diminishing returns. And that's really the essence of my keynote, and so why I was very happy to be here in the end.
I'm so glad to hear you're aligned with my thought process with regard to, I see with regard to social media pundits, everything's about customer acquisition, and so few of them are really focusing in on customer loyalty, customer retention, and nurturing the relationships with the customers. Sarah, you've probably seen the same thing yourself.
Yeah, I mean, Media Frenzy. We are, we're a digital marketing agency, and we are challenged all the time with generating marketing qualified sales leads. So, and you're right. There's this. There's statistics out there to show that you can do a far better job growing your existing customers and being profitable from them than actually trying to acquire new ones.
An inside-out approach. In fact, in the book, and it's weird because Flip the Funnel is my third book. But you know what, I love the fact that this book that was written in 2008, 2009 can still be as if not more relevant. But there are three hypotheses in the book. First one is retention becomes the new acquisition, and that's important because the idea is this is not an end unto itself. Retention is a means to an end. So the big idea is use existing customers to gain new ones. So you can actually acquire new customers, but via existing ones. And they're going to be more qualified, and they're going to be more sensitized, and they're going to come in through a much more authentic, trustworthy door. The second hypothesis is that customer service or customer experience becomes the key strategic differentiator. So if the 4 Ps are commoditized or commoditizing or will be commoditized, the only way to differentiate a brand or a product or service will be service, service itself or customer service. And then the third is that, going to your point, the real role of social media is retention. So can it acquire? Sure. But the real role is that engagement, that dialogue, that community, that kind of connection.
So where does all this passion of yours come from? I mean, what have you... to write 4 books is impressive. It takes commitment, dedication. You've got to truly love the subject. Where have you learned all this? Is it just, where do your views come from?
Well, a lot of it has to come back to and come down to where I come from, which is from South Africa. And we were discussing earlier, I started my career working for a very funky fast food chicken company called Nando's Chicken Land, which you've just got to understand, you know, I mean, this is the company, their customer service posters in the stores say, did we make a cluck up? So, I mean, irreverent, authentic, really, really secure and a tremendous amount of inner confidence, but also all the things, the buzzwords today, interactivity, purpose, service. This company was just naturally doing that. And, you know, one thing I said today is that, you know, you got to put the cult in culture. You know, these are words that mean something. It's like we talk about customer satisfaction, but satisfaction comes from the word satisfactory. We don't, you know, fans, Facebook fans, well, that comes from the word fanatic, but are we really connecting with them, connecting with our fanatics? No, we're not. And so, you know, so that became kind of the genesis for studying marketing and falling in love with marketing done well. But I think I've always been, you know, I often say the 4 books I've written have the same thing in common. They're all about change. They're all about innovation. And they're also all about optimization. So sometimes I'll describe myself as the Robin Hood of marketing, because I love to steal from the rich to give to the poor. You know, from television, radio, and print to the rest of these new approaches, from communication to conversation, from acquisition to retention. And in Zero, the idea of from indirect, being a tenant renting media, to direct, which is owning assets, and monetizing marketing, being a landlord. So there's always this transference of money, because it always does come down to a dwindling finite resource. Our budgets are not increasing, they're decreasing. So more and more we have to produce more with less or more from less. And the only way to do that is to be more innovative. Otherwise it comes back to Einstein's definition of insanity, right? Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result.
Can you give me, so if you're looking at companies and you're looking at, you know, you love marketing success, marketing done right, do you have a view in the B2B enterprise world of a company which does marketing right?
Well, I mean, I use some examples even today. I mean, we've seen a lot of companies that lead by example, and you know, pun may be intended or not intended. So, you know, we talk about Marketo and Eloqua and HubSpot, and you know, I was joking that Salesforce's Dreamforce probably has the GDP now of a small emerging nation somewhere. I think it's actually like, I think you need a passport now. I think it actually is its own country. But if you look at kind of HubSpot, and now they've got Inbound, you know, there is this really great collection of you know, what I would even call in the flip funnel, ADIA, which is acknowledgement, dialogue, incentivization, and activation. And even from a Zero standpoint, Zealots, entrepreneurship, retention, owned assets, we're seeing, you know, talk is cheap. Walking the talk demonstrates that commitment, and demonstrates, you know, the fact that there is depth behind the empty words. If I put a framework together called the marketing bow tie, you got the traditional funnel and the flip funnel. When you link them together, these two funnels, they form a bow tie. But what I really love about this is you got acquisition, it's very Zen in a sense, or yin yang in the sense that on the one side are the promises you make, on the other side are the promises you keep. On the one side is what you say, on the other side is what you do. And I think more and more now, we want to, if a B2B company, or certainly in this business, is going to tell us how we should be doing our business, they better lead by example.
I agree.
Now, I come from the advertising business, where agencies are the worst at advertising themselves. If they're such good marketers, why do they do such a lousy job of marketing? Why don't they invest in the brand? Why don't they invest in community? And so, you know, I think the B2B companies that are doing a great job, you know, in this context are the ones where you can actually see them, you know, as the saying goes, eating their own dog food.
Yeah. That's a really good point.
I tell you, you're one creative individual. It's absolutely. I
love the way you think about. You do
some
like
of these analogies that you have here with regards to things I would never.
The king of mixed metaphors.
Yeah, you are.
You really
are.
Just phenomenal with some of the. Now, what you've done is you've planted some indelible type of impressions in me. I know that Sarah probably the same way with regard to the way you've been able to communicate and tell these stories. That the thing is, with regard to flip my funnel on that. So did they approach you about taking your book and the concept in that, or how did this whole thing evolve? Your relationship with Sangram and that?
It's such a great story because so Sangram writes this post unbeknownst to him, in fact, someone who we have in common, Tim Kopp, who used to work at Coke and then was working at Exact Target, and I've done a lot of work with Exact Target as well, which is now Salesforce, kind of sent him, I think, a polite note saying, FYI, there's this guy who wrote a book called Flip the Funnel like about 5 years ago, and you might kind of want to just reach out or just hope that the waters are smooth. And he's such a nice guy, Sangram, and we started talking, and not only was I not upset, but I still would have preferred this conference to be called Flip the Damn Funnel. but you know what? It's this idea of the rising tide floats all boats, and I think there really is a best practice. Even as I said today, people don't care much you know until they know much you care. Even in the early days of blogging, I started blogging and podcast. I wrote a book called Join the Conversation, which is a phrase I should have trademarked and I didn't. All the way back in 2007, when so much of this didn't even exist, and when you go back to this concept of even as a blogger, and I was kind of a little bit self-entitled as a blogger because suddenly I was an influencer and people would send me free stuff all the time. And I was a little bit full of myself, I suppose, during that time because bloggers had this tremendous amount of self-importance. But even back then, the learning was, as they say, don't hate the player, hate the game, right? But the corollary of that is never attack the man or woman, attack the idea. It's very hard to hate another human being. It's impossible, in fact, because when the more we figure out what we have in common, the harder it is to get too riled up about what we actually don't have in common or what sets us apart. And so once we started connecting, it was pretty obvious that we're both good guys and that we wanted to help each other. And in particular, I wanted to be able to say, look, let's do something together.
Yeah. Well, one thing that's phenomenal is this is trending on Twitter today throughout the world. So your Flip the Funnel concept of Flip My Funnel, your name now is going to be a household word.
Those
within
book sales are going
to
No, because people are going to Amazon and they're typing Flip My Funnel and they're like, oh, there's no book written called
Well, we'll help you out in that regard,
yeah,
okay?
Flip the Funnel.
Flip the Funnel. Yeah. But the more importantly, though, you will become a household word associated with this whole entire concept.
It's great because you know what I say in a self-deprecating way that Flip the Funnel is the best book I'll ever write, which of course is ironic because I've written 4. Yeah. But it's not to say that the other 3 weren't. It's just I think this is as close to the silver bullet of marketing as we will ever get. And there is no silver bullet of marketing. This idea that without your customer you are nothing, you have nothing, but also this inside-out marketing approach, it's so obvious. It's so commonsensical. That's not really a real word, but I like to use it. Even now with what I do, which is my day job, which is my second startup company called Evolution, this idea of connecting startups and brands, it's still as a retention play. So there is a startup that I always talk about called Run Pee, right? It will tell you exactly when in the movie you can go and pee.
Oh
right,
gosh.
yes.
In other words, the boring parts of the movie. And so if you think about the brands that could connect with this, if you are a drug company, and dealing with actually a medical condition that causes you to go to the toilet a lot, or, you take a step back from the sublime to kind of slightly, more ridiculous, but not as literal in a sense. What about, quite frankly, if you AARP? And you've got an older target audience that needs to go more often. Or what if you're now Procter & Gamble and, you have this product called, I don't know, Pampers, and you're dealing and trying to connect with first-time moms who, again, have to go to the toilet a lot because they're pregnant. And then if you keep laddering back, now suddenly you can be Coca-Cola. I mean, we're in Atlanta. That's just basically saying, hey, listen, get this sized Coke because you're never going to miss the good parts of the movie, in a sense. And so think about all those brands that could get involved. But my point is, why? It's not to acquire new customers. It's to deliver better service, better experience, more utility. Actually, be a brand that does good. That isn't just good. That actually does good and follows through. And so that's the opportunity. That's the MarTech. That's my MarTech opportunity. Technology and marketing coming together to better serve the customer.
I agree. So tell me, what have you heard today, which you kind of wholeheartedly like you champion? You just maybe something you've heard, maybe it was Jill Rowley spoke, or was there something you really think is spot on with your views, or something maybe even you just think is completely far-fetched and not what you support?
Well, I thought that Joseph Jaffe keynote was outstanding. By the way. You know, for me, being the first and the opening keynote is great because I get to set the tone, and I get to put that stake in the ground and have people riff on it and build on it. And quite frankly, I'm okay for them to detract as well. I mean, not to go on too much of a tangent, but I sometimes say to people, embrace hatred. And what I really mean by that is we all want people to love us, but we can't deal with customers who hate us. The real enemy is apathy and indifference. It's being forgotten or ignored, or just people have no point of view whatsoever. We want to elicit an emotion. So I often say, like, I don't want people to agree with everything I say. Otherwise, just put a mirror and talk to yourself. It's the debate that moves us forward. It is sometimes even, you know, agreeing to disagree, but us being able to bring smart people together to get to a better place. And so for me, I've heard a lot of validation, and one of the things I get to see what resonates. I look at the tweets, etc. But even in the panel that just went after me was this idea of humanity, right? In my presentation, I said, how do you automate intimacy? How do you scale humanity? Our mission is to create a customer-centric and employee-centric ecosystem powered by technology, but not to replace humans. Look at Apple, for example. At a time when most brands are closing down bricks and mortar stores, Apple's opening more. And not just opening stores, opening them in prime real estate areas. At a time when we're firing human beings and replacing them with machines, Apple is flooded with blue shirts in their stores. So what do they know that everybody else doesn't? It is ultimately, we're human beings right now. And there's still 24 hours in the day, and we still have one attention span. And the older we get, the less we can multitask. But it's the ability to find the balance between art and science.
And creating great customer experiences. If you go into an Apple store, the experience is fantastic.
It's outstanding.
Yes, without question.
The Genius Bar is free.
Right.
And isn't that a best practice even, you know, within B2B or B2C, which is, you know, come for free and, you know, and then upsell them on a premium experience.
Well, I hate to say this, but the funnel has just flipped again, okay? And Sarah, you want to conclude this? And unfortunately, I want to turn it over to you because it's been a great
fantastic discussion. I've really enjoyed it. So, no, I mean, if we can quickly, okay, so like you've done 4 books. What is coming next? Can you give us a sense of what do you think that topic's going to be? What's the next disruptor you think needs to be talked about and shared, and you know, do you have a view?
Well, I'm definitely the 5th book, if and when I get the chance to write it, will absolutely be focused on a different spin on MarTech, which is actually the intersection of marketing and technology from a startup standpoint and from an innovation standpoint. I am super passionate about the fact I look at these two worlds: the startup world with ideas but no money, the marketing world with money but no ideas. Sometimes no idea. They're searching for the big idea. And my feeling is when you look at a $700 billion industry or with what I call with the disposable marketing communications budget, I'm like, you guys should be talking to one another, because the keys to the future, the keys to the kingdom rests in the hearts and minds of entrepreneurs today, which you once were, by the way. So for me, I'm very excited about figuring out ways that actually big corporations can be more entrepreneurial, can be more agile, and specifically harness the power of the intrapreneur, their employees and their customers, and in general, the startup community, to create solutions that are mobile first, because today, I mean,
the way the world is.
You know, we talk about in marketing the battle for the heart and the mind. We sleep with our phones underneath our heads to monitor our sleep. And during the day, we have them literally on our, you know, in our breast pocket against our hearts. So for me, it's figuring out that gets me excited. So whether we talk about the Internet of Things, wearables, etc., it's all coming together in this different kind of spin on MarTech.
Well, I hate to say it, but we have to conclude this.
I could sit here and talk to you for much longer.
Absolutely. Just phenomenal conversation. Look forward to talking to you again.
Exactly.
I know both of us.
Be my pleasure.
But it's been a real pleasure. And
Really
thank
good,
you,
Joseph.
and enjoy the rest of the conference. Okay?
Yes.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate it.